Penguin Random House Audio presents The Voyage of the Cormorant, a memoir of the Changeable Sea. This is the author, Christian Beamish. Introduction to the softcover edition. I wrote Voyage of the Cormorant in 3 months, sitting at my desk in San Clemente in the cottage I rented after I'd returned from Baja and an ill-fated sail on Vancouver Island. Of course, if you consider the 2 years I spent building Cormorant and the 2 years I spent learning to sail her, as well as the years surfing from childhood on and all my dreams about this mode of voyaging, then the book took considerably longer than 3 months to write. The ingredients were well prepared, and the baking was a final, almost incidental step in the overall process. Not that it matters much how long it took anyway. The 6 weeks I spent at the Banff Center's Wilderness Writers Residency were essential also, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have had that studio in the forest in Alberta. To have discovered for certain that given the uninterrupted time with food and shelter accounted for, I could work for 12 or 14 hours at a go. Indeed, that I was greedy for the time to sit with the words and puzzle out the story. Those 6 weeks provided me with the first chapter. Writing is not like sailing, except in that it requires long hours of sitting and in the metaphorical similarities between aspects of navigation and plotting your storyline. But writing is about choices of what to include, how much or how little to say about a given topic, whereas sailing, once one has left the shore for the open sea, is about dealing with the conditions at hand. I've received a fair amount of correspondence from people who have read Voyage, and virtually all of it has been positive, some of it very moving in the way my experience has touched others, made them rethink their situation, particularly how the disease of depression warps one's view of the world and what is possible. For that, I am humbled and have learned that what we say, especially in print, can have real impact. A question some readers have had is what I meant when I wrote about my experiences with God on my solo journey down the desert shore. That's a tough one to nail down in a tidy declaration. If someone were to ask me what kind of religion I have, I'd say not much, but that I am a Christian. And I believe that Jesus walked on the Sea of Galilee, fed the multitudes with a couple of loaves and some fishes, turned water into wine, rolled the stone away, and joined his Father in heaven. And that all of that is wrapped up with the holiness that people everywhere in the world have always known is real, regardless of the faith they proclaim. My experience of God was one of wonder at creation. As the psalmist wrote, "They that go down to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters, they see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep." I was back in Baja 2 winters ago, down in the remote corners, surfing again with a couple of buddies a few months before my wife had our second child. The track winds 50 miles across the desert, and when you make the bend that finally brings the ocean into view, your eyes just drink up the blue and the sparkle of it, quenching a thirst you didn't realize was so strong. But what hit me on that trip, 6 years after sailing that same coast in my little craft, was the vastness of the territory and the possibility of disappearing in it, whether on land or sea. Everything changes when you come back, and I surveyed that view with new eyes that marveled at how much my earlier motivations had changed, how strong my desire was then for solitude, how strong it is now for family. My wife Natasha and I are on the most common and arduous of expeditions, raising our 5-year-old Josephine and our 18-month-old brother Miles while holding on to some semblance of surfing and of a life in nature. Digital screens play a bigger role in our home than I am comfortable with, but we snuggled down last night and watched E.T. with Josephine, and that was pretty fun. So perhaps it's my acceptance of screens that concerns me. It's nothing a few days out at the islands wouldn't fix, sleeping under the canvas again, making that crossing in the old way, under the press of sail alone. I like the idea of a free-range family life, entire seasons in Baja, weeks and weeks on the boat combing the shore, a wilderness immersion. But we have to make a living, even if our shelter for the past 4 years has been a modest 450-square-foot house. And we want Josephine to go to school, which she does, swinging on the monkey bars with the best of them. So the wilderness shores await. Our home in Carpinteria, California, is a long way from the concrete jungle as well, so we bide our time with Sundays on the quiet beach out front or some wave riding over at Rincon when time allows. This house we rent, tiny as it is, wedged between the front house and the back gate, has 2 patches of soil on either side of the front walkway and lies not 200 steps from the salt marsh and estuary on the west end of town. It takes only a few minutes to walk to the ocean, and from the threshold at the front door I can see the ridgeline of Santa Cruz Island across the channel. Natasha, daughter of a cinematographer father and an artist, entrepreneur, punk rocker mother in Hollywood, comes from a long line of gardeners reaching back in time to Hungary and Armenia. She has transformed those 2 humble patches of soil and made them a moving palette of vegetables and flowers, set off by trees and wood boxes, more plants and flowers in talavera pots near the front door, and even a lily pond with fish and taro growing in another big glazed pot by the fence. In short, she has made this shoebox a home. She conceived, gestated, and birthed Miles here, too, just as she did with Josephine in the house in San Clemente, where I wrote Voyage of the Cormorant. So indeed, I have embarked on a new voyage since my little experiment aboard Cormorant. I still have her. She sits on a trailer at the end of my street at my neighbor's place, ready to launch right off the beach. We had a magical sail 2 months ago, before the surf season started, shoving off through the gentle wavelets and heading out to the reef at the top of the point in town. The water was exceptionally clear, the kelp forest swaying like trees on land, and Josephine and Miles in their life jackets clutched the gunnels and peered down as we ghosted across under oars as if flying. Natasha said she had never seen Garibaldi, the thick, golden-colored fish that are the state marine fish of California, and as if on cue, just as we met a rise in the reef, 3 of them swam in lazy circles below us. Josephine and I put our wetsuits on and snorkeled the reef together, tying the boat to a thick stalk of kelp to keep it from drifting off. The lightest of breezes came up when we pulled ourselves back on board, and I put the sails up, steering with an oar to avoid tangling the rudder in the kelp, and we glided in, home in time for lunch. This little boat, Cormorant, 18 feet of Shetland Isle curves and Norse boat lineage, has been a vessel of dreams. And this book, Voyage of the Cormorant, is but one installment in an ongoing story of ocean involvement. But I love this story, the people I've met, the wildness I've encountered, and the book stands as a piece all on its own. I've drawn up plans for a 27-foot boat based on what I've learned about simplicity and the utility of traditional designs. I'd thought to have had this boat built by now, but anyone playing the child-rearing, career-tending game will understand that the time has not been right. Still, I've laid out a building frame and the molds for the 27-footer, and also bent the inner stem for the bow, so I have begun. More work needs to be put into getting the bottom curve right, and there's the question of funding, but I envision Josephine and Miles helping me in the years ahead. Then again, children and power tools are probably not the best combination. All's well, though, because if I've learned anything from these voyaging days, it's that we get just what we need in time. Christian Beamish, December 29, 2016, Carpinteria, California. Chapter 1. Shakedown. The fishermen sorted their meager catch on the beach in their workboats, the ubiquitous pongas of Baja California. There were 4 men, 2 in each boat, and they used a rusted-out truck with threadbare tires to drag the vessels from the surf. I left my station wagon, also well on its way to rusting through, with my boat and trailer on the bluff, and went down to where they were working. As I approached, one of the men gestured toward my boat, her freshly painted wood and fine lines too pretty by far amid the ruined lobster traps, discarded lines, and sun-bleached husks of fish on the beach. "You like the ocean?" he asked in English. Not waiting for a reply, he held up his hands as if to ward off the sea and said, "I don't." The other fishermen glanced at my boat as they worked, pulling at their grimy nets and tossing out small crabs and strands of seaweed. Big surf rumbled shoreward in broad swaths of foam. "We go out because we have to live," the man continued. I nodded. "But the ocean's very beautiful here," I said. Not beautiful, he said. Peligroso.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?